So I took a couple of questions on my way here, and question number one was, where did I get this t-shirt? I got this t-shirt because my organization sells them. My organization sells the t-shirt, and you can find us at bwwla.org. Or you can come to Lamert Park, because that's where we are. Alrighty, I'm gonna move on. So we passed through a section called Los Angeles Assembly. Anybody in here from Los Angeles? Okay. Anybody in here been to Watts Arts Tower?
What Watts Tower?
Watts Tower. Yeah. Have you?
Yeah, many years. Quarter century.
Okay. So Watts Towers was, it came out of, I want to call it the Watts Rebellion. And so that was in the 60s. And that rebellion created Watts Towers. It also created Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital. And it created a cadre of artists who worked in and around South Los Angeles. So I want to talk about a couple of them because we just walked through Los Angeles Assembly. So John Outerbridge, how many of you are familiar with that name? Yeah, so he has a piece over here, but John Outerbridge was, and I shouldn't even say was, John Outerbridge is wonderful because he's still living too. But basically, John Outerbridge was the artistic director of Watts Towers and really created a space that was a community space on 107th and Watts. A couple of artists who went through there, or one was a photographer named Willie Middlebrook. Another was an artist named Ryua Akinshegun. There were other artists who went through there also, but one of the things that John was able to do with Watts Towers was bring diverse elements of the Black community together. So what do I mean by that? So my very first grant was for storytelling. And with that storytelling, I got it from the Department of Cultural Affairs in Los Angeles. And we decided to have a storytelling festival at Watts Towers. At that festival, John brought folks in. Y'all heard of Jack and Jill? Right, so he had folks from Jack and Jill there. He also had folks who took the African dance class, so that meant that was folks from a different walk of life in terms of Black folks. So he had regular Black people who were in the middle there also, but we were all able to enjoy the storytelling festival. And the featured storyteller at that point in time was a woman named Jackie Torrance. Jackie Torrance was a huge woman. She was huge. And she would come, and we had to get her a special chair because she was that big, and basically just sit on a chair and mesmerize all of us. And she did that with all these different social, economic, education, and political classes at Watts Towers. And I think that the work that came out of that is reflected in some of the art that is coming out of Los Angeles during that period. So we're talking about the Charles Whites, the John Outerbridges, the Ryua Akinsheguns, the Willie Middlebrooks, and it's not even a but I wish that there were more folks from Los Angeles who were part of the soul of the nation. I love the fact that Chicago is there. I love the fact that we started in New York and we're going back to New York. But Los Angeles had a tremendous footprint in the art world also. And as you go through this exhibit, I want you all to think about what Los Angeles is contributing to art, right? So one of my favorite little things to talk about, have you all heard of an artist named Varnett Honeywood?
Yeah.
No? Okay, you all saw The Cosby Show? Right. So The Cosby Show had a lot of Varnett Honeywood's art in that particular show. And Varnette Honeywood was a local Los Angeles artist, okay? And her sister did childcare. My child went to her sister's childcare. So when I showed up at Varnette Honeywood's house, there were filmmakers like Julie Dash. Have you ever heard of Julie Dash? So Julie Dash's daughter and my daughter, well, we have more than one, are the same age. Her daughter is in Zinga, my daughter is in Urbese. They were both at Varnette Honeywood's house, and they became fast friends. So we had a filmmaker and an activist who were able to figure out how to work together because their children were fast friends at an artist's home. So we know that art showed up all over Hollywood, right? And that's another imprint that Los Angeles has in terms of the art world, because when folks were looking for art, set decorators, etc., they went to the people in Los Angeles. And that's how we also here in Los Angeles put our footprint on the art world. Right? Because when you saw programs like The Cosby Show or Living Single or A Different World, you saw the artists who were in Los Angeles who generally, basically, donated their work, but then got a little known or a little fame from it. Right? So, do you all recognize this? Or do you know what period of that historic action that was? Okay, this is back to my Chicago life. And this is Bobby Seale. And when they put him on trial in Chicago, they bound and gagged him in the courtroom. So real life, 60s, 70s. How have things changed? Not much. Not much. So the thing that has happened with the court system, and I say this as a person who works in the health world, is the courts have now been packed. They don't have to gag us and bound us now, because the court is packed against us, from the district attorney to the judges. So, and that's another role of art, to reflect where we were and where we are. Yeah? Questions? Comments? Should I move on? I actually do. I love a conversation about where we are with the court system and how this is significant to our lives in 2019. Even though this is a snapshot from that period, Soul of the Nation, 63 to 83, but it's also very much where we are in 2019, if not worse. And like I said, I think that is sort of the role of art, to be a reflection of where we are. It takes a snapshot of the culture and of the times. But then in the next room, when we get to abstracts, it also gives us permission to dream, to think about the future, to not be put into a box. My daughter and I often have these conversations, and I don't know if you all have these conversations about, should art be functional or should it just be art? So do you all have those conversations? Is there a role for art? Can it just be? Or does it have to have a functionality? Does it have to have a message? Have y'all had thoughts about that?
It can be both.
It can be both? We can have art just for art's sake?
It's not an either or proposition.
It's not either or? Yeah, well, my daughter and I go back and forth. I think it should be functional. I think it should play a role in our lives.
But isn't that considered more craft art? Craft art was always considered a form of functional art. things that you would use, but done in a...
I understand what you're saying in terms of craft, in terms of, looking at the chairs that we make or the tables, that type of thing. But this also is a reflection of a period of time, right? So it's not functional in the sense of I can use it for something, but it's functional in the sense that it reminds us of where we've been and how far we have to go, as opposed to simply being decoration on my wall. So I think that
semantics, which
it's, and there's no right, there's no wrong. It's all opinion in that regard, right? But even the fact that we have a soul of the nation from 6383 means that we're trying to look at a period of time and get a message from what happened in that period of time. Yeah? Okay. Anyone else? Function? Not.
I think it should be a realm.
It should be a realm.
Yeah, you can have cartoons, and that's for comedy, to make you laugh. You can have for expression, to make you think. And you can have something that's just beautiful, and it reminds you of something beautiful. So I think it's like life. If art reflects life, it's going to reflect different phases. And so I think it serves all purposes. What I may call art, somebody else may not call art, but I think it's functional in that it can show different expressions, different feelings, different thoughts.
Yeah. Did I hear something over here?
You hit it right on the head.
I do. It's a full spectrum, right? From the extremely useful to we'll figure it out. Okay. All right.
Modern art to me is like a puzzle, so.
Yeah. So I do think that art and artists should be allowed to dream and to be able to see past the horizon where some of us who are, quote, not artists can't see, right? So there is a guy named Gene who was born on my birthday, the nerve of him, who's an artist. And what he does is create patterns or textures. So, and those patterns and textures are for cloth that we see on our next clothes, right? So plaids and stripes and designs and that type of thing. So I know on a continuous basis that he sees past what we see, or I see, to create what our next fashion statement is going to be. So artists should be able to see past that horizon that us mere mortals cannot see. And I appreciate that about them, though I must admit I do not always understand it. Yeah. Alrighty, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna take my time so you all can take your time too.
You all head on to the next gallery. Ed Tsugo in the blue shirt will guide you to our last gallery.
Is everybody here who's gonna be here? Maybe? Okay. All righty then. It's hard to know where to start in this room. So, I have a question for you all. How many of you have walked through this exhibit before? Okay, good. Because I wouldn't want it to be your first time because it's just too fast, right? It's just, and I skipped over so much, and there's so much that there's here. So I wanted to mention, how many of you all saw the Buford Delaney painting of James Baldwin? Yeah. So I want to go to say that Buford Delaney and James Baldwin were expats, right? Meaning that they decided to move to France during their lifetimes. And that's where Delaney died. So when I was in France, there's a whole group of black writers who pulled together their money to get a headstone for Delaney. Because one of the things that happens with too many artists is they don't become famous until after they're gone, right? And I just wanted to point out to folks that it is okay to support artists now. So remember I told you all that I know a lot of artists? One of my favorite things to do is catch them. They live a feast or famine life, meaning they're living like really good, or they're like really trying to get the rent together. And when they're really trying to get the rent together, that's when I'm like, okay, I can buy some art. Because that's when I can be exploited, and that's wrong. So my thought is, as you know artists, give them a little love. It's okay. Okay, so I kind of want to talk about that wall back there and what that reminds me of. I'm going back to my roots again. I remember telling you all I was born and raised in Chicago. So now I'm going to ask you all a question. I was born and raised in Chicago, and every year, including this year, they have a Bud Billiken Day parade. Anybody else here from Chicago? No. So Bud Billiken Day parade, the history of it is there's a black newspaper movement that started, and the black newspaper in Chicago was called The Defender. And The Defender was sold by newspaper boys. And they would go out and sell the newspapers. And the owner of The Defender, his name is Robert Sinsat, decided to do something to celebrate the black newsboys who were selling his paper, or a black newspaper in Chicago, and put together the Bud Billiken Day Parade as a celebration of the black newsboys who were selling his paper. So this parade has evolved to, it is a celebration of culture and life on the south side of Chicago, and it's one of the things that my dad and I did every year. We would go to the Bud Billiken Day Parade. And here's my question for you all from other places in the world or other places in the US. Where did you all have parades? What parades were you all celebrating that celebrated black life and black culture? So that wall back there is from New York. And in Brooklyn, every year they have a parade that is like a serious African festival. But there are other places that have parades. Where else? Here? What do we have here? The King Parade? So just about every town now has the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade in January. What other parades? And don't tell me Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear about parades that celebrate culture.
You have the Caribbean Festival.
You have the Caribbean Festival? Where's that at? And when is it?
Hollywood, they had it about 2 weeks ago.
Hollywood, they had it about 2 weeks ago. Okay. All right. They also have a big festival called the Caribana. And the Caribana is in Canada, and it's usually the first weekend in August, and it's a celebration of the Independence Days in the Caribbean. What other places have parades? I can't hear you. At Union Station?
That's at the very end of October, the first 2 days.
Oh, Dia de Muerte? Yeah, that's a big parade, a celebration of that space of the living and dead, right?
It's culture to pay homage to your family members and everything.
That's true. What else? What other parades? Where are other people from here? What about you?
From LA.
You're from LA? Okay. From where?
France, Paris.
Okay. Oh my
We
goodness.
have Bastille Day, but
You have Bastille Day. Yeah,
for the independence.
sure.
Yeah.
What about you ladies?
They still have it, but in New York, the Caribbean, it was Carnival. It was on Eastern Parkway. Eastern Parkway, the first weekend of September.
First weekend of September, a big carnival in New York. Okay.
Mardi Gras also. Mardi Gras in February in New Orleans and all those. Mardi Gras. Yeah.
Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is a serious parade. Okay. What about Oakland?
Black Joy.
Black Joy? Okay. Alrighty. So, and I guess my point here is that a parade is a celebration. It's artistic expression where lots of people get to put costumes and dancing and all kind of behaviors together to go out and celebrate their culture. And that's what's on that wall. And that's what we don't know so much about, just in terms of, I'm glad that this is part of Soul of the Nation, and glad that we have a chance to talk about how we celebrate out loud our culture, because we do that. We just don't get the attention that Macy's does for the Christmas parade or Thanksgiving Day parade, but it's still part of our culture. Okay, one last point. I saw you, we have 1 minute. I'm standing in front of pantyhose, all right? So I am so happy I don't have to wear pantyhose anymore. I am just thrilled. You all do not know how happy I am not to wear pantyhose. But the thought with this pantyhose was about the issue of childbirth and how childbirth changes your body, but yet it snaps back to where it was. Right? But not quite the same. All right? So for those of us, it just doesn't, it's never the same, but it goes back. All right? However, remember I told you all that I work with an organization called Black Women for Wellness. And one of the things that's going on with Black Women for Wellness is we're doing a lot of work around maternal health at this point in time. Black women are 240% more likely to die from childbirth than any other people. So that's where I wanted to leave you with right there. What can you do about this, you say? Who's here from California? Okay. Black Women for Wellness has a bill that we have, SB 464, around implicit bias. So what we're asking is that healthcare professionals who work in hospitals and birthing centers, etc., be trained in implicit bias, so they will not think that Black women can tolerate more pain. So they will listen to Black women, and we can do something about this maternal mortality rate. So that's one thing you can do in terms of support our bill. It's carried by Holly Mitchell. All right? What else can they do? In addition to our bill, you can look at our organizational website, bwwla.org, and we put different actions that we are taking around maternal health in that. We have a conference coming up, and you should get a postcard from our conference. We have a campaign called Black Women Deserve Better. Our conference is called 400 Years, a reflection of lessons learned and looking into the future. And you can also call me and talk to me about it, because you might have an idea that we don't about how to impact maternal health for Black women. So that's our next move with Soul of the Nation. Thank you. My name is Jan Robinson Flint. Jan Robinson Flint. Okay. 1 minute. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Seriously enlightening and reparative, and I appreciate you for sharing everything that you have. Again, well, this is the last of our gallery talks, which have been a really exciting set of programs. But in terms of Soul of the Nation, just so you know, it closes September 1st, and all the Thursdays up until then, admission into the exhibition is free, all day on Thursdays. And also we have a very exciting program coming up next month, Black Fire Sessions Part 2. In which we're pairing over jazz artists with other contemporary artists such as Anthony Braxton, Kelsey Williams, and other others. So you can visit our website for more information. And again, a very, very big thank you to the Southern California Library, which helped us put this together. So thank you again for everyone for coming.